Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah. Every year that goes by, EV adoption just gets better and better, and 2024 is absolutely no exception of that. So we're going to go over the brands in North America with EV sales. We're going to talk about their growth, their new models that are coming out, and what I expect for 2025. Now, before we get started, I want to say I'm not going to be talking about brands like BMW, Mercedes, Volvo, and Audi and Porsche, which have yet to release their North American figures for sales. Typically, they do that with their quarter earnings, which they'll likely do later January, even into February. So we're not going to talk about those. Now, when more of these automakers release their 2024 numbers, we'll talk about it then. But Cox Automotive, which is one of the leading automotive stats companies that takes all the registration data and compiles it into one long document for people to read, says that the United States saw over 1.3 million EV sales in 2024. However, a lot of those include hybrid vehicles. That 1.3 million doesn't just include pure, just battery electric vehicles. It also includes hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicles, which honestly, does that count? Hybrids serve a purpose and they're great for leading people into EVs. A lot of the Tesla owners that I know owned Priuses beforehand, and they love the electrification side of their Prius and slowly wanted to go full electric. And so I think hybrids have a purpose in the market. Let's jump right into Kia, which saw a 74% jump in EV sales compared to the year previously, highly marked by the Kia EV9. America, specifically the United States of America, when I say America, I mean North America, but the United States of America loves big, boxy SUVs, and the Kia EV9 is exactly that. And they saw a sale of 22,017 Kia EV9s compared to just 21,715 EV6s. So the EV9 is Kia's best-selling EV. Now, that is without knowing the Niro EV sales. We're going to talk about Hyundai's Kona EV in a second, which is the same as Kia's Niro EV. But the Niro EV, they sum it into one large number, so we don't know how many Niro EVs Kia is selling comparative to how many EV Niros they're selling. They just put it all one number, but I meant Niros compared to the EV version. But as we know it, 22,000 EV9s, that does super, super well. Let's jump over to Kia's sibling, Hyundai. Hyundai saw a sale of 44,400 Ioniq 5s. That is a 33% jump over 2023 for the year 2024. They saw a sale of 12,264 Ioniq 6s with a decrease of sales of 4%. Now, before I get to the Ioniq 6, I have a big bit about that. Let's talk about the Ioniq 5, which for 2025, as well as the EV6, are seeing a redesign. If you didn't know, the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 are pretty much the exact same vehicle. They share the same battery management system, motors, high voltage, low voltage, wiring, ECUs. It is pretty much the same vehicle underneath. The only thing that really separates them are the interior and exterior spaces and designs. Now, the Ioniq 5 sold almost double the EV6. Again, 44,000 compared to 21,000. Now, here's what I think that this may actually change. Now, I think the 2024 Hyundai Ioniq 5 looks better than the 2024 Kia EV6. However, there are some changes that are happening. Of course, we're seeing a redesign for the 2025 EV6 with a new fascia, more range, more power, and it's getting native NACS on the correct side, the side it's supposed to be on to match with Tesla's supercharging network. However, Kia is, while they're doing that, Hyundai with the Ioniq 5, while it's getting native NACS, it's going to stay on the wrong side. Now, let me clarify this because every time I say wrong or correct, people in the comments say, hey, Isaiah, there is no correct side. When I mean correct side, I mean the correct side to fit Tesla's supercharging configuration. If we want to have that conversation, the correct side to put a charge port is on the driver's side front, but that's a whole nother video. The point is the EV6 is going to have its charge port in the location that matches Tesla's configuration. So I think we may see a big jump of EV6 sales, especially as for charging on the Tesla supercharging network, being an EV6 is going to be a lot easier for you. Really doesn't change, much. I mean, other than blocking a stall, but I think that will actually kind of move the needle for some. Regardless, the Ioniq 5 is doing super well. Let's talk about the Ioniq 6, which got number 3 on the i90 Surge. Us on Team Out of Spec, we took 10 cars, 9 EVs from Seattle to Boston, and third place of this competition was the Ioniq 6. You can watch that video over here on the key card on screen. It'll be linked for those listening in the description. But the Ioniq 6 did well, third place, right behind the Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive and the Porsche Taycan. It has a great efficiency, great range, okay power, but compared to its counterparts in the sedan segment, particularly the Tesla Model 3 Refresh Highland, the Ioniq 6 is just kind of mid at this point. It's really not as competitive as it should be. I'm hoping we see a redesign with a little bit more power, and I mean, when I say a redesign, I mean a total overhaul. Maybe it's just me, but I'm someone that likes weird looking EVs. Like, I like the Model X and its egg shape. I like the EQS SUV and its weird egg shape. But the Ioniq 6 is hideous to me. I don't know what it is. It's this catfish look, but I don't like it. And I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way. If Honda does introduce a new model year for the EV6, which of course they will with native NACS, I hope they do a refreshed design. I want to see better materials in the inside. I mean, the interior to me is horrible, no matter what trim you get. And I don't mean to hate on any of the Ioniq 6 owners. I just think the Ioniq 5 is really good. And then the Ioniq 6, right, great powertrain, but what is it as a vehicle? For comparison, right, BMW, which only reported its year-to-date quarter 3 sales, sold 17,000 i4s in North America. They sold 5,000 more i4s than Hyundai Ioniq 6s in 3/4 of the time. Hopefully that makes sense. So clearly, right, the competition shows that, well, Tesla's selling really well with the Model 3. The i4, which has horrible range, mid charging, it's just a regular BMW 3 Series with batteries. And they kind of did a bad job at it, and they're still selling more than the Ioniq 6. Clearly, the Ioniq 6 isn't doing as well as they really should be. Let's jump over to Ford. The Mach-E. Ford sold 51,745 Mach-E's, a 27% jump over 2023 for 2024. The Lightning sold 33,510 Lightnings with a 40% jump over 2023. And the E-Transit sold 12,610 E-Transits over 2023. That is a 64% jump. And so I'm super impressed the E-Transit is doing well. The regular Transit, which has a lot more trims and options, right? The E-Transit is pretty one step forward. The regular Ford Transit, you can configure a million different ways. They sold 152,000 of those, including the E-Transit. So clearly, the internal combustion engine, which sold more than 140,000 of those, did pretty well. And it really speaks that we're still inching our way up there compared to other countries like China and Norway, which have upwards of 50% EV adoption. In America, it really isn't the case yet, right? And that's not what I like to see, right? I'm an EV fan. You're likely an EV fan, and it's going to take some time, and we're going to get there. I think 2025 and 2026 is going to be a really big year for EVs and EV adoption. But as 2024 stood, it was a good year, but we're still far behind. The Explorer EV, which is currently only sold in Europe and China, I believe, isn't sold in North America yet, but it is expected to sell in the United States come this year, 2025. So there will be another Ford EV option for you to choose from. The Explorer EV is based on Volkswagen's ID.4. And while we're talking about Volkswagen, let's go over to Volkswagen. Now, this is just Volkswagen. We're not talking Audi. We're not talking Porsche. We're not talking Rimac. We're not talking any of those. We're just talking straight up Volkswagen. They sold 17,021 ID4s. That is a whopping 55% decrease over 2023. Which speaks here, right? The ID4 range, software, design. I mean, overall, it's same thing with the Ioniq 6. It's plagued with just midness. It really isn't competitive in this space, and that's why the Model Y is continuing to do well. The Mach E is continuing to do well. The Ioniq 5 is continuing to do well. Even the EV6 is continuing to do well. But the ID4 is seeing a decrease. Now, the ID4 also saw a decrease in production. So maybe, right, there's some correlation here that they had less vehicles to sell. But honestly, be honest with ourselves, is that really the point? I think the ID4 just had poor sales regardless. The Buzz saw a sale of 1,162 vehicles. This is not the first full year for the ID Buzz, and this year, 2025, will be, and so we'll fully be able to gauge what the sales of the ID Buzz are looking like. What's happening in 2025 for the Volkswagen? I believe we're going to see an updated ID4, as well as we're getting the ID7 sedan. And so we're going to have a market full of BMW i4s, Tesla Model 3s, the ID7. We're seeing a lot more EV sedans coming in the market, right? The focus has been on these mid-sized SUVs, which I'm really annoyed by. There's too many of them. Now we're getting into big boxy EV SUVs and sedans, which really diversify the market, and the ID7 should be coming into the US this year. Now let's talk about the company that is absolutely leading the EV revolution, to GM, General Motors. General Motors sold 23,115 Blazer EVs. They sold 670 Escalade IQs. You can probably go to your local GM Cadillac dealer and find an Escalade IQ there. I saw one. It is gigantic. It is really big. I mean, it is just a beefy looking car compared to the regular Cadillac, even though it has a sloped roof and looks to have less interior space. It is just, it's thick, okay? It's a big car. This is not its first model year. Same thing with the Blazer EV. This is not its first full year model year. So amazing for the Blazer EV, although the Blazer EV we saw added to the market earlier this year, a lot earlier on. The Escalade is just seeing its first few months of production. We see the Bolt EV, which saw a sale of 8,627 vehicles. At this point, the Bolt is just selling off the rest of its inventory. They only sold 45 Bolts within the last quarter 4, October, November, December. That is because the Bolt is no longer in production. We're going to see a new generation of Bolt on the Ultium platform this year. And so this will be a better Bolt, better charging, hopefully similar price, better range. This will just be a good base model EV. The Bolt, which has mad charging, is in my opinion a really good EV for its price. And if we can see something with better charging, better efficiency, and better range, then more the merrier if it has a similar price. So 8,627 Bolt sold. Silverado EV, 7,428 sold. They sold 28,402 of the Lyriq, 28,874 of the Equinox EV, 1,788 of the Sierra EV, and 13,993 of the Hummer EV. Now, the Sierra and Silverado haven't had full model year either, right? They're still kind of feeding off until late 2023, 2024. They're still ramping up, and now 2025, I think should really have good tailwind. They should be pushing right forward. The Hummer EV has been in production for a while. A lot of the Hummer EV sales, in my opinion, must be let off of leases. You can get like a Hummer EV for like $500 a month with like $5,000 down. Really good deals if you want something with a 200 kilowatt hour battery. But clearly the Hummer EV is doing well. That is their fourth best-selling EV among the GM brands, which includes Chevy, GMC, and Cadillac. Buick doesn't have any EVs, but those big three there. And so, look, GM has a really diverse market here. I mean, the Equinox EV, Lyriq, Bolt, which again, production should start again soon, and the Blazer. A lot of these mid-size EV SUVs, but clearly things are going well for GM over there. And let's go over to Rivian. Rivian doesn't break down their sales. They literally just say, hey, we produced this many, we delivered this many, and they delivered just over 51,000 vehicles in 2024. Now, me being the Rivian guy I am, I already know that The CEO, RJ, has stated multiple times that vast majority of their sales are R1S. I believe at this point, particularly for the last year, it's likely somewhere with like 40% to 50% R1S, maybe 20% EVDV, and the rest being R1T. The R1T is Rivian's least selling model, although it still does well for itself. The R1S is really Rivian's bread and butter. Well, it's Rivian's bread. The EDV is Rivian's butter. That's what makes them the profit. But 51,000 from Rivian. This year, not much should change for Rivian 2025. I mean, the same thing as 2024, just another sale of the EDV, R1T, and R1S. But Rivian should be done with their manufacturing facility for R2 in Normal. And we should start seeing the first validation builds of the R2 come the end of 2025. That means 2026, we should start seeing the production and full production and delivery of the R2. Now, moving on to the best EV automaker, right? GM now. Tesla sold 618,000 approximate EVs in North America. Tesla doesn't decipher how many North American sales versus global sales that they have, but this comes from Sawyer Merritt, which I'm going to trust. And he says that they sold about 618,000 EVs in North America. No real breakdown there. Now, while Tesla, of course, did way better than any other automaker out there, this is actually a step down compared to the year prior. 2023, they sold 670,000 EVs in the United States, compared today, which 618 is a pretty good, hefty decrease, and is probably why Tesla sold less EVs in 2024 in total global production compared to 2020. Compared to 2023. They sold more in 2023 than they did in 2025. I'm sorry, guys. It's 2025 now, and last year was 2024, and we're comparing 2024 to 2023. It seems harder than you think. Now let's talk about some of those slacking in EV sales: Toyota, Honda, and Subaru. The people who really just don't want to focus on EVs. Toyota sold 18,570 BZ4Xs. That is their only EV model in North America. While they do have a BZ4X similar car, they have two other actually EVs in China. They don't care about us in North America, but the BZ4X, 97.8% increase in sales. That is almost double the sales compared to last year. So the BZ4X doing super well. Here we go. Honda sold 33,017 Prologues. This was not on my bingo card, okay? Honda Prologue and the Blazer EV and the Equinox EV are all on the same platform as well as the ZDX. Honda sold more of GM's car on GM's platform, right? Honda sold more of GM's car on their own platform. That's nuts. 33,017 Prologues, 7,391 ZDXs, Acura ZDXs. Again, just another set of midsize EV SUVs. Then we have Subaru with the Solterra, which is just the BZ4X's literally fraternal twin, which sold 12,447 Solterras, which is a 40% increase over 2023. So Subaru almost saw half of double compared to 2023. Toyota saw almost pretty much double over 2023. So look, don't doubt dealerships. That's what we're seeing right there. Dealerships selling vehicles super well. Toyota, Honda, Subaru. I did not include Stellantis in this list. Stellantis hasn't really given us a full outlook of their 2024 year. Not to mention, we haven't gotten the full year of the Fiat 500, and that is the only EV model they have. They have plug-in hybrids, but I'm not that interested in plug-in hybrids. Are you? Let me know down in the comments. I'll leave it at that. Now, one of our future videos is actually going to be talking about all of the upcoming 2025 vehicles next year. Well, sorry. Oh my gosh. This year, because this year is 2025. All of the EVs coming this year in 2025. So before you go, comment down below. I want to know what EVs you're expecting, you're most excited for 2025. We'll feature them in our next video, so your comment might show up there, but we'll talk about what your most anticipated EVs are, what the EVs coming in 2025 are. Stellantis has two, right? We have the Wagoneer S as well as the Jeep Recon, which is supposed to be like the Rubicon EV. I think that's actually going to do super well. And so look, there's going to be a lot of EV options out there. We already talked about the Explorer EV. 2025 is going to be big. 2026 is going to be even better. I said it already. Every year that goes on, EV adoption and accelerates more and more. But yeah, look, those are all of the EV sales. Particularly, we are still around 8% EV adoption in the United States of America. So I'm hoping that just increases more and more. Because again, China, Norway, entirety of Europe, just doing well with EV adoption. Some countries upwards of 50%. So America's still far behind. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is another episode of the Auto Spec podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.